Now, not many people will probably remember or even know that Disney used to own the Anaheim Ducks hockey team. That was one of the factors of where the Mighty Ducks movies came from. I remember the Mighty Ducks films, and I really enjoyed them when I was a kid. The first one mostly standard, basic, help kids along, build up their confidence, show a good time, and I really enjoyed those films. And the sequels were okay enough. We don't talk about the Disney Plus series that was complete crap, but I'm not here to talk about the movies. I'm actually here to talk about the animated series based off the Mighty Ducks. Now, when I first heard that they were making an animated series, of course, the first thing that came into my mind was, wow, oh, we're going to get an animated series. We're going to see the kids again. We're going to see, the coach, and we're going to have, another fun little season. And that is not what we got at all. Instead, what we get is a sci-fi action adventure series from a bunch of ducks which got trapped on Earth, and they had to stop a villain called Dragonus from taking over the galaxy and blowing up the Earth. It was a completely left field thing compared to what we were expecting from a show called The Mighty Ducks. And it didn't suck. The reason why it worked was because unlike shows like Lunatics Unleashed, it didn't take the concepts. It wasn't like we took the kids from the Mighty Ducks movie or the real players from the Anaheim Ducks and stuck them into the show. Instead, they created this original universe and new characters. Now, the main factor why this show was created, and it's pretty obvious, was to capitalize on Power Rangers. This series came out back in 1996, and Power Rangers was the big thing. And Disney wanted a really popular action-adventure series based on it. And you can see when you watch the series, there's a lot of elements from Power Rangers, as well as other series. The main noticeable thing is that the series is comprised of 6 main characters. Some are goofy, some are serious, some are, the stoic leader, and some are mystery characters that we just don't really know anything about. Now, the voice cast for the Mighty Ducks is probably one of the really positive things. It got all the big names from the 90s, ranging from Frank Welker, Jeff Bennett, Jennifer Hale, Brad Garrett, Clancy Brown, Tim Curry. Now, what's the series actually about? It's about these group of ducks who come from an alternate dimension. They come from a world called Puck World, and one of their main things that they love is hockey. And one of the major problems that the series dealt with was this alien race called Saurians, led by the evil Dragonus. And he attacked our planet over thousands of years, wiped a lot of them out, and he was going to re-enslave the Puck World once again. So that they're fighting Dragonus. They go through a dimensional portal, which ends up on Earth. And unfortunately, they're all trapped here. So while the Mighty Ducks are fighting Dragonus to protect Earth and as well to prevent him from going back to Puck World. Now, a lot of fans try to figure out where does the Puck World fit. Some of the Disney shows are linked together. For example, DuckTales and Darkwing Duck are. We have Launchpad crossover between the two series, and these guys are ducks. And in DuckTales' case, we've had many episodes of aliens from other planets. DuckTales has gone into space on multiple occasions, so it is a possibility that Puck World is from the DuckTales universe. Now, when you watch the series, a lot of things do feel familiar. In a lot of cases, one of the biggest things is this plot line feels very much like Transformers. And there's a good reason why that is because one of the creators was David Weiss, who worked on Transformers G1. So he did, take various elements and kind of the combination of the ducks working with humans and that aspect of trying to protect the world. Speaking of the ducks, I did say they are very similar in the idea of Power Rangers where they have 6 members. Let's start off with the main leader, Wild Wing. He's kind of like your standard leader. Now, originally, Wild Wing was not the leader of the show. It was supposed to be another duck there from Canard who got trapped in the portal dimension because they had went into the portal and right before they exited into our Earth universe, they shut it off and he got trapped in there. And so one of the main objectives was to locate Canard. Funny enough, this show was kind of created in the wake of Power Rangers. That plot line is very similar that happened years later in Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. Wild Wing, like I said, is the reluctant leader who became the leader of the series after necessity. He's pretty much like Jason from MMPR. He's there. He doesn't get that many episodes, but you like him, and overall, he's okay. Again, like I said, I wish he had gotten more episodes because, again, just, besides being a leader, he only got 1 or 2 episodes that focused more on his, human side. He was thrown on to being a leader. He lost faith in himself. Now, of course, while we have the stoic leader, we have to have the goofball of the team, which goes to Nosedive, the brother of Wild Wing. He's the crazy guy, the guy who always references, stuff from Earth. He reads comic books, watches movies. He can get annoying in some cases, but I was glad they didn't go too far. And there were some decent good episodes that focused on him being a little bit more serious. Now, next up is Duke. I think a lot of people would say they like him, but he's one of the weakest of the characters. Now, I like his premise. The issue was that we just didn't really get to know him as much. He's the recluse of the team, where we just didn't really know that much background. We did get some tidbits here and there, but we didn't get a complete full episode where we see his entire background. All we really got to know is that he used to be a mercenary that turned good, and he dealt with the Saurians in the past, so he had a sullied past that he did put behind him, but then it also throws in doubts. I think a lot of people like him because he's like, not only is he mysterious, he's like a ninja. He has a sword. He has an energy sword, so it's very reminiscent to Star Wars. Mallory McMallard. Mallory's pretty much like the super serious military officer. She's, by the book, I have to get it done, knows how to use weapons. But she's not like a complete stiff. She does have a warm side. She can be funny. And, and it also helps because Jennifer Hale was voicing her, because she knows how to play that type of character where, yes, you want a really super serious character, but then she can throw that stuff aside and be goofy. She's another character that did not get any backstory besides that, she was military on her planet, and that's really it. Although she did get a couple of episodes to lead. I just wish they had done more things with her. Now for Tanya, the genius geek girl for the team who has to always deal with all the mechanics. She's the one who builds all the main equipment, from the Migrator, which is the land vehicle they have, the Arrowwing, which is their flying vehicle. And I also noticed Disney seems to always love using purple for all their, genius girl characters. She does have a little bit of an issue of reading the situation. And then she also puts like too much on her shoulder. Like, I have to build, I have to improve, I have to make sure all the guys have all their equipment and it has to work. So she's very serious in that regard. She got a fair bit of episodes. There was one particular episode I like when, like I said, Wild Wing, where he like doubted himself and didn't want to become the leader. So like all the ducks had become like leader in that episode. They were rotating between it. You think the genius would be good as a leader, but the problem is she takes a long time and she tends to overanalyze things. So now the weakest of the character was Grimm. Now I always like Brad Garrett when he does, characters. He either does super serious characters or complete goofballs. Grimm is kind of like this turned monk character who used to be, kind of a jerk, a dick to people, took advantage of them. Because, he's this really big guy, so he was always, intimidating. The problem with this character, Grimm, he didn't get to do much because of the way character's made is that he doesn't really speak. So Brad really didn't get that much screen time, and he only got one main focus episode. He's a cool character. I did enjoy his episodes that he gets starred in. There's a ton of episodes that I can mention, like they parodied from the Blues Brothers, Die Hard. It would do a ton of jokes, references from movies. References I remember when I was watching it as a kid, I had no idea what they were talking about because, what kid really could watch Die Hard? But, that's what they did. It was a parody of that where, kids and adults could enjoy the series. They did, of course, do parodies and jokes on kids things as well. There was a blatant Legend of Zelda / Altered Beast type of episode where they go to another dimension, which was all magic based, and they had to save a bunch of characters from there. So it wasn't just a parody of adult movie. It was also a lot of kid stuff and references as well, including small little references here from Sonic the Hedgehog, Mario. You had your fair share of things for everyone. As for the villains, I think all the villains were cool, but one was kind of lackluster, and it was kind of sad. Of course, Tim Curry is voicing Dragonus because, Tim Curry, no matter what, he is born to play a villain because he just has that perfect voice. Unlike, a lot of the characters who are goofy and fun, Dragonus never did that. He was just pure serious. He would kill and get his job done no matter what. As for his lackeys, for the most part, they're fine. Frank Welker voiced Chameleon, which he can change his shape, and he was the guy who was, again, full of jokes. He would references tons of things from the Three Stooges, and it was perfect because Frank Welker has such a huge range of voices that he can do. It was perfect for the character that can transform into virtually anything. One thing I will say is that, for the most part, the villains did get some focus episodes, especially the Chameleon. The character that Tony J voiced, Wrath, he didn't really get screen time. He was the mysticism character. He could do magic and do all this stuff. They didn't really do anything with him. I don't know if it was because this guy was magic based. It would be really hard to do certain type of plot lines with him. So they really didn't use him as often. He kind of disappeared for several episodes. I really like Tony J. He was voiced Megabyte in reboots. It just sucks that Wrath just really didn't get to do anything. And that leaves us with Siege, who was voiced by Clancy Brown. Clancy Brown, you know him for either a complete goofball like what's-his-face, Krabs in SpongeBob, or Lex Luthor in the Superman animated series, which was actually going on simultaneously. So Clancy Brown was voicing this character and Lex Luthor at the exact same time, and the two shows were competing with each other as well. He was okay. He's your standard lackey, goofball that follows orders, gets it done, screws up when the hero has to win, things like that. He's okay. They didn't really explore him either, but there was a good meat enough for the character where they could have done more things. I kind of felt like a hint of maybe this guy wanted to take over Draconis' position, and they might have actually done a mutiny if they had continued on with more seasons. There was that potential. As for human characters, there's not that many that you really can speak of. There's really only two main ones. One main one is Phil, which is their manager. Now, obviously, when the Ducks got trapped on Earth, the only thing they can really do was fight bad guys and play hockey. So where do they go? So they build everything in secret under the Anaheim hockey ring and become the Mighty Ducks team. Yeah, we do see some hockey games here and there, but again, it's only really about the superhero element. But getting back to the characters, Phil, which was their manager, he was the guys who found the Ducks and basically gave them the Anaheim court to do whatever they want. Hey, they pay their bills, they play some games. The only other major human character you can really talk about is Captain Cleghorn. He is basically the foil for the Mighty Ducks. You got to have a jerk for the series like J. Jonah Jameson is to Spider-Man. Unfortunately, the character was not really developed. The main problem is, again, all he was really there was to be the foil. The Ducks do one dumb mistake, and, we got to go after Ducks. They're the bad guys. We got to arrest them. That type of thing. Now, the reason why that occurred was because, unfortunately, Disney aired several of the episodes out of order, where any development of the character did occur because, again, he was the guy who really didn't believe in the Ducks. He thought they were bad guys because he had no idea who they were. The aliens came down the planet. Of course, anyone's going to be scared of them. What is this? Da 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 da. He wanted to arrest them. So it took him a long time to actually warm up to them to the point where, all right, you are not bad guys. I don't want to put a grudge on you. I'll work with you. But because the episodes were aired out of sequence, those few episodes that did develop Captain Cleghorn were thrown at the end, and in most cases, majority of the people did not see them, and there's a reason why, and I'll get back to it later. Other than that, we had a couple of other guest villains. Now, it wasn't just Draconis and dealing with him all the time, and they had come up with a couple of cool, unique villains for the series as well, because it would have gotten boring with just always being Draconis. So we had guest villains for 5 or 6 episodes. I think they were mostly fine. They brought a couple of them back to continue on in later episodes. The concept of the series is really interesting. It took a lot of ideas from here and there, put them all together, and we had, a superhero of Ducks. The one big problem that I had with the series, it's a big plot hole of the series, and it could have been avoided. The main issue with the Ducks and Draconis on Earth is they cannot get back to their own dimension because the ship, Draconis' ship, is powered by these special beryllium crystals. And he needs to use these crystals in order to make the ship fly and then go through the portal and escape. And the Ducks as well. They can't leave because they need the portal device in order to get back to Puck World. So they're both trapped there. Now, they can't have the ship fly into space without them. However, the portal device still functions, and it's used in 3 episodes. Draconis actually brings in 3 people from different planets, including one Duck from Puck World. She was a mercenary, and she was wanted to infiltrate the gang and, steal their technology and blah, 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 blah. The problem that arose was that if the portal device works and you can control and bring in whoever, and there was even an episode where the Ducks were offered to go back to Puck World, which was actually a really good episode because it involved the time travel episode. They traveled to the future and everything got screwed. It was very much like X-Men, where they went to the future. Since they weren't there, everything went to hell. Dragonus won, took over the planet, killed a lot of people, blah, blah, blah. It was that type of story. It was a really good story. The problem is, if they can travel with the portal device to any planet, what was stopping Dragonus or his minions to go to another planet that had Belerium crystals, bring them back, recharge the ship, leave, done, the Ducks are dead, whatnot. It was a big plot hole. I don't understand why they did it. Like I said, it was only used for 3 episodes where they had brought people in and out, and the time travel episode. And I was like, if you had rewrote just those 3 episodes, this plot hole would have been completely avoided. I was like, it was a very obvious plot hole when I was like 7. Don't tell me the writers didn't notice this. Now, one of the biggest things, the show wants to say it's the biggest thing, but it really isn't. That's the reason why I haven't mentioned it to now, is the golden mask that you see while Wing. It basically symbolizes, like, you're the leader. If you have the golden mask, which was basically a relic from Puck World, it was the mask that helped stop Dragonus' original attack and uprising on their planet. It was one of those savior items, like, a famous blade and whatnot. The main thing it could do is see through stuff. It had, like, thermal vision, heat vision. It could recognize certain things, or it can hack certain things. But for the most part, the mask was just basically there. The mask was trying to be this, like, cool, super thing, but it really didn't do much for the show, except for key bits here and there. The only other thing that I can mention for the series was that, unfortunately, Disney decided to air the episode out of order. And this caused a couple of problems. Like I said, it caused problems with the captain, where his progression of the story was all delayed until basically the end of the series because several episodes were moved around. But the main issue with the series is that I remember watching all of the entire season that I knew of at the time. I watched the entire season. It was pretty hard back then because Power Rangers was on, Superman was on, and they were all competing. They all ran roughly at the same time. For whatever reason, Disney aired the series finale as episode 21, even though there was 26 episodes. So there were 5 episodes I actually never saw when they originally aired, because episode 21 clearly was the series finale. It had, it linked the titles from the beginning of the series, which was called The First Face-Off. This one was called The Last Face-Off. At the end of the series, they had finally rectified that plot hole issue where they destroyed Dragonus' ability to go use the portal device. So they probably realized they had a big issue on their problems. They wanted to get rid of it so that the Ducks would have been trapped on Earth along with Dragonus, and they would have probably had to figure another way back home. So there was a plan to make more seasons. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out. I'm assuming Ducks got, eaten by either Superman or Power Rangers at the time. But because they aired that episode 21 that early, the last 5 episodes, and usually why networks do this is because they deemed those episodes as bad. I never saw those last 5 episodes until I saw it on Disney Plus, because I saw that and I was like, oh, we're at the last episode. I'll wait for season 2, because they were clearly setting up for season 2. The show just disappeared, and then you just moved on like every other cartoon that just got canceled in those days. So overall, even though the Mighty Ducks cartoon is nothing like the movies, as a standalone thing, I think it's a solid show. As for episodes, whether you like parodies, bits of Power Rangers, bits of other superhero shows like Batman the Animated Series, because a couple of people who worked on both shows as well, a really solid voice talent cast, I think, it deserves a watch. I really was disappointed that it never got a season 2. Not just because, we never got a resolution to, the Ducks, if they ever get back home. But it was because, it had a chance. Just kind of like the Road Rovers at the time as well. Because, Warner Brothers tried that series. Disney tried this series. They were both kind of like, oh, we're going to try to copy the Power Rangers show. So they both did their own thing, and both worked in their own merits. It's just one of those gems that, the 90s did actually try something original, and it actually did work. It was just, unfortunately, it was just so overloaded with stuff. And even if the Mighty Ducks did get maybe like a second season or even a third season. Sooner or later it would have died because Pokemon it was just 2 years around the corner, and that would have just obliterated virtually everything. You know, it's the one thing I miss the most of the 90s. You woke up early at 6 a.m. and you saw Extreme Dinosaurs, or you had, you know, Disney come out with this unique series. I think it was still at the time where writers were really good at their job and they try to come up with something. One thing I will say though, you know, usually you expect like the toy line to be okay and do well. I think the toy line for the Mighty Ducks was complete crap. And it's not because of like quality issues. It was the fact that when I wanted like the Migrator or the Arrowwing, the toys did not match what was in the show. Like every vehicle that came out, the toys were like deformed. They were like, you know, those dumb play sets where you can open them up, and it was like, I just wanted a toy that matched the vehicles that were in the series, and that was it. And the one thing they never made was the mask. So like the mask that was supposed to be this whole symbol of freedom, heroism, leader, and the toy line itself did not even have the mask. I was like, if I had wanted one thing from the Mighty Ducks cartoon, would have been a like full replica of the mask. And I know there are fans out there who have either made a CG rendering of it and 3D printed it, or made like a really beautiful, you know, replica of that mask. Now, the one thing I hope they never do is make a live action Mighty Ducks cartoon. I do not want to see these ducks be written bad, and B, probably end up being in horrible CG because Disney can't even make good CG anymore. Let the past be the past and Mighty Ducks stay where it is. A good memory in people who grew up in the 90s. And if you've never seen the show and you wanted to see something else from the Mighty Ducks, you know, franchise, if you want to say, definitely give the animated series a go.